Hey folks, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to our weekly dose of greatness that is Tower of God. I love doing these videos. This is probably one of my favorite things I've gotten to talk about in a little while. Today we're going to be talking all about episode 7, Lunch and Tag, but before we get into the video proper, I do, as always, want to give a big thank you to those of you who shared last week's video over on Twitter. At Daniel STG, at Janame, at Matt87Eagle, at Mr. Canada 2, at Louis Lupina, at Luna Da Otaku, at Darkfireplayer4, at Inksplatter A, at Deep Not That Deep, and at Bubba Lubber. Thank you all so much for sharing last week's video over on Twitter, everybody, and if you too would like to have your name shouted out in next week's Tower of God video, then be sure to share this video around on the internet, and then tag me at JoJo Talks Too Much over on Twitter, and I will be sure to shout out the first 5 of you in next week's video. Now then, what do you say we go ahead and get into things? So without further ado, like, comment, subscribe, shady. Okay, so when I watched this episode, I noticed like an underlying theme, which I love. I like when episodes have a specific theme in mind. And no, it's not lunch or tag, although both of those things happen. What I think the underlying theme of the episode is the dynamic of friends, like how friends can be a benefit and how they can be sort of shady, how the term friends is very moldable and bendable. In this case, we see what should be friends, right? 2 princesses. We see rivals in the form of Bam and Ho, and we see friends in the form of Shibisu, Hats, and Kun and Bam. And friendship in general is an underlying theme of the episode, the dynamics between friends, and I use friends in huge air quotes because some people ain't friends, some people are enemies, some people are rivals, and some people are straight up shady, and I'm looking at you, Ho. But yeah, without further ado, we're gonna go ahead and talk about some of the stuff that I really want to talk about this week. Specifically, I want to talk a little bit about the Princesses of Jahad. So this is interesting, right? Because the episode opens with this discussion of the princesses, and we actually get a little bit of info, something I've been wanting for a little bit now, on what the princesses exactly are, because it wasn't exactly clear previously, but now we get a little bit of info. So the princesses aren't necessarily biologically the daughters of Jahad. He merely gives them a little bit. He gives them a little bit of something. He's like Salt Bae. He gives them a little bit of salt, just pow. Gives them a little bit of power. And they don't have to be biologically connected to him. So the princesses aren't actually his princesses. They're not his offspring, just women who have gained his favor and thus gained some of the power of King Jahad, the first person to climb the tower and build the tower as they know it. Or rather, build the area that they know. I don't know, whatever. The tower is still weird. The tower itself is still very mysterious. But again, I like getting these little nuggets. I don't want to know the whole thing. I don't want to know all the world building just yet. I want it piece by piece. And this is how I like it. And we also learned that the princesses are not allowed children because they don't want the potential for these kids to be running around with the powers of Jahad, like giving them an unfair advantage in climbing the tower, as well as just, diminishing the importance of Jahad himself as well as the princesses. And there's a really nice little metaphor about beautiful shoes. Now, I'm not a shoe collector, but I assume that if you were, there would be shoes that you just like that sit on some sort of pedestal and are never used. Even though that's what they're meant to do, they're never allowed to actually go out and be shoes. They're just meant to look pretty and be impressive. And that's what the princesses are supposedly being compared to, at least by Endorsi. Just beautiful shoes that are never worn and never allowed to jump off the pedestal. But sometimes, occasionally, some do. And that's the case with actual Anaak, who did end up having a kid, who we know as Anaak. And obviously that led to some not so pleasant times for Anaak and her mom. And yeah, it was sad. I think the most heartbreaking thing in this whole episode is watching, like, from the point of view of baby Anaak, watching her mom, like, wave her off, and then she keeps running back to her, and eventually the mom's like, you gotta go, you have to go, and there's, like, fire engulfing everything. And we do hear the mom say that you have to hold on to this man's hand and don't let go. But who is the man? I don't know. Is it Becky Lynch? It's probably not Becky Lynch. But she holds on to the man's hand and doesn't let go, and eventually that's the last we see. Really impactful stuff. And I can't help but question something, because they established that Anaak was essentially born with powers of Jahad, whereas someone like Endorsi had to earn that right to have a little bit of that power. And who do we know who is mysteriously gifted with abilities that they are not able to really control, and B, have no real reason to have them? Oh gee, I wonder who that could be. Yeah, Bam's definitely, and again, I'm an anime only, so I am merely speculating, and I don't read the comments these days, so I like, feel free to talk about it in the comments. Actually, maybe don't. If you're gonna just put a manga, just put a spoiler tag and then put a bunch of spaces, so people who are anime onlys like myself who do want to read the comments don't get spoiled. So put manga spoilers, bunch of spaces. I'm gonna say something. I'm gonna throw out my theory. 3, 2, 1. Bam is very clearly, like, he's very clearly the offspring of a princess. Like, he's the son of one of the princesses of Jahad. It makes too much sense to me. I feel like it's definitely leading us to that conclusion. Now, whether or not that is the conclusion, or whether they're actually trying to, like, sideswipe us, and it's like, oh, you think, like, where the show's gonna zig instead of zagging, where it's like, oh, you think Bam is this, but actually it's this, and we led you to think that, but it was but a red herring. It could be that. I don't know. But I do think there's a precedent now for Bam to be considered one of the princesses of Jahad. Well, one of the princes of the princess of Jahad. It's a fun little theory, I think. Anyway, and I do assume it to be true. Just it seems too clear. But speaking of the princesses of Jahad, we actually do get to see Anaak versus Endorsi. Not as long as I wanted it to be. I wanted this to be like a knockdown, drag-out fight, right? Like, I wanted this to be hardcore, like a brutal fight. It's not quite that, but it is a beautiful throwdown when it is in motion. Because when this thing is, like, whoever was animating this, I couldn't check Sakugaboru. I watched it as soon as it came out, and I'm recording this as soon as I finished watching it. So nothing's up on Boru yet, so I don't know who animated it. And I'm not good enough to tell that kind of thing. But whoever did, kudos, because the opening little combat scene in the beginning of the episode is dope. Moves with total grace. And they do kind of, I don't want to say they ruin it, but they do add a goofy ending to the fight, which I wasn't expecting, but honestly, I kind of welcome it, because that's sort of Endorsi's character, and that's sort of the mood that Tower of God has, where it's not above being comical, and it's not above, like, poking fun at itself. Like, the fact that this ends with Endorsi being like, no, my only niece, like, you can't let me fall, I'll die, like, please, my only niece, like, holding on to her, and Anaak's like, I have tons of other aunts, like, you can die. Like, it was really funny, and I don't know, I just wasn't expecting it to be as funny as it was. And I think that one of the reasons why I like this fight, as very brief as it is the fact that with a combat scene, I want there to be a story being told. That's why I like wrestling as much as I do. Like, there's usually a story being told in wrestling, and in some of the best action scenes in anime, there's always a story being told. And here it's Anaak's vengeance, but also a story of just, like, being born with power versus power earned over time. And it's because of that specific theme that I think we'll see these two come to blows again, probably pretty soon. And I love that there's a lot of complex emotions here, because Endorsi did know the actual Anaak, and that Anaak's mother was actually quite kind to Endorsi. So she does feel this sort of, like, it's not so much that I don't like you, it's that you caused the death of somebody who was nice to me, and I don't really know you. And Anaak is just sort of like, you people killed my mom. Like it's not so much you princesses, but because of your weird hierarchy, my mother was essentially, like, set ablaze. So yeah, like, we don't see a body though. You know, are you following? Are you following? We don't see Anaak's mom's body. And unless I see a body, like Game of Thrones and shit like that has taught me well. If I don't see a body, I'm not considering them dead, just MIA. But it did look pretty final, but I wouldn't be surprised if Anaak's mom comes back. Again, the fight scene was interesting, but I just wish it went a little bit longer. But speaking of complex feelings between Anaak and Endorsi, you can also say that a certain other duo has some complex feelings, at least very one-sided complex feelings. And that is this man, Ho. Ho and Bam, like, there is a growing animosity. And it's one of those like festering type of things where like this underlying resentment is really festering inside of Ho, and it's really driving the man crazy. And it's hilarious because it's so one-sided. Like, Bam is so clearly just like, we're all friends. Like, see, Bam is the reason why I say, like, Bam and Ho are the reasons why I say that this episode's theme is friendship, or even just the dynamics between people who claim to be friends. They don't have to be friends, but that claiming, like, yeah, we're friends. You know what I mean? Like that is the theme. And it is brutal when it comes to Ho and Bam, because Ho is very clearly struggling, and I do feel bad for him to an extent, right? Like, seeing Bam just like cakewalk through a lot of this stuff, and their instructor even saying like, your grasp on your abilities is very poor, but the wealth of your abilities is intense, so I think you're gonna get by just fine, but you need to learn to control. You have immense power, but it's not harnessed quite right. And I do think that's interesting. Again, very shonen-y, right? Like, lots of power, but you need to learn to harness said power. That's who Bam is. And Ho is able to control, like, he has control, but he doesn't have the same depth of ability that Bam has. And he's watching Bam outpace him, and it's driving him crazy. And it doesn't help when Lowry, who I love, helps out Bam and teaches Bam how to properly hit the targets. Break the targets! Sorry, Smash Brothers kicked in there. Lowry helps Bam learn to break the targets, and it's because Bam helps Lowry with finding this man's pillow, and I thought that scene was great too. Again, I can't remember the girl's name, but like the girl who I ship with Shibisu, Hag, I don't remember her name, but she's like literally drooling on this man's pillow, and I felt bad for him because you could tell that dude was like mortified by this. Like, the man lives to sleep and you ruin his pillow, how dare. But yeah, seeing like Lowry help Bam again is just another step in Ho, I think, eventually snapping and really going after Bam and teaching Bam what I assume is going to be a pretty brutal lesson, that sometimes people lie. Sometimes they're going to claim to be your friend, but it's not so much that you're friends as much as it's a keep your friends close and your enemies closer type of thing. And that is pretty much what I think Ho is doing. And Ho is like absurdly pissed, and we start to see his true colors when he's like walking through the hallway and he's like, damn it, like his whole tone of voice changes. He goes from like, hey, how's it going, blah blah blah, to like, ah, like that whole just damn it, like that whole tone shift in the way that he speaks. Like, it's like Ho is dealing with something, and I don't know what it is, but I wasn't expecting to be as intrigued by this character as I am. And especially given that weird dream where it's like people like harnessing horns from what I assume to be Ho's people. And we like it does add up, since Ho only has one horn. He's sort of lopsided, you know? So maybe he had his horn stolen by some thugs, and so he's climbing the tower to like get the power to protect his people. Maybe that's what it is, and that's why he is so like dead set on climbing the tower, and why the idea of failing is so mortifying to him. Like, we see him wake up in a cold sweat and crying because of this. So I don't think it's all malicious. I don't think he's specifically out for himself. And again, the show being mysterious, the note, what was up with that note? Like, so you want to climb the tower? And he opens it up, and the note says something that startles him. It's something enough to really put him on his heels, that by the time we see him where they're in the little classroom where they're talking about the next test 4, he's very clearly rattled. And it's, I don't know, I really found that interesting. I'm curious about what's going to happen with Ho, but very briefly I'm going to touch on the fact that Shibisu and Hats do make enough friends to complete the test. They don't really, like, okay, so this kind of confused me, right? Because they complete their test, but we see that Rack and Team Shady's Heavy, whose name I don't know, they've passed, so they already passed. But didn't Shibisu and Hats pass when they got 10 people to be their friend? That kind of confused me a little bit. And honestly, the game of tag confuses me a little bit, because essentially it's being overseen by the test administrator, Quant, who is not well looked upon, apparently. And it involves the 28 people who haven't passed the test yet. Like, they haven't passed their own test. Like, but I thought Shibisu and Hats did, but again, like, meh. And then they're separating most of the previous teams, like Team Tracksuit is separated, Team Turtles is separated, I think Team Shady is separated as well. Basically, like, unintentionally, it's how the cookie crumbled, and they get split into teams A and B, and 2 players are it from each team. But then I think that I couldn't tell if the administrators were picking 2 people who were it, or they only have one, or if each team, the administrators, Team A and Team B, each have one specific person who's it. I think it's that, because we only see Quant. I don't know if maybe the administrators have a second person who is also it. I don't really know. And I don't really follow what the goal is. Like, I guess they're just trying to take the medal from whoever is it. I think that's what it is. I'm gonna need to really, again, I'm recording this right after seeing it, so I assume once I'm editing, I'm gonna be like, oh, I'm an idiot, it actually works like this. But yeah, I don't know. Was anybody else confused? I will know what's going on by the next episode, but I was a little bit confused by the explanation, because I just assumed tag is like, tag, you're it. Like, I don't know. I thought it would be like, you tag somebody and they have a certain amount of time to tag somebody else, and then if they don't make it, they're eliminated. That's kind of what I just assumed it was going to be, but it's more like capture the flag. It's more like flag football, honestly, the more I think about it. And I really love that Shibisu and Kun have this moment to talk where they're discussing the fact that if their team wins, which is likely, Kun is their light bearer, and the man is, like, we already know, the man is absurdly clever. Like, he even helps get Hats and Shibisu the last names that they need. Like, he is just a ridiculously clever dude. So we kind of have a feeling that their team is probably going to take it. And when they discuss this, it's mostly in relation to Bam, who is not on their team. He's on Team B. So they're kind of concerned that Bam could fail. And the two of them talk about it. And Shibisu seems more concerned than Kun does, but I think we all know that Kun is just trying to hide his concern because he doesn't want to feign any type of, like, he doesn't want to show any sign of weakness. So I think he's trying to be like, yeah, no, I mean, like, he could fail, who knows? But on the inside, he's like, please don't fail, not my boy. Like, you know, he's thinking that, but he's keeping it deep down. And we don't really get to see much of the game, but we do know that Shibisu is the bait, because of course he is. And Quant does fall for their trap, and it looks like Anaak is going to whoop his ass, but it turns out that the trap only really pisses him off, and the last shot of the episode is Shibisu looking very concerned with a test administrator who are the administrators are badass, standing behind him, looking pissed off. So I wouldn't want to be Shibisu right now. I really, really dug this episode. Not my favorite, but I did like the amount of action we got. I love the amount of info that we get, and I like the continued intrigue. You guys know me. I already love this show. With that said, everybody, I am going to wrap up my thoughts here. Question of the day today. Am I the only one who was confused by the rules for tag? It sounds more like flag football. Am I crazy? I'm probably crazy. Let me know in the comments. And with that said, we've reached the end of the video, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, then don't forget to boop the up snoot and share if you care. And if you want to see me rambling even more, then feel free to follow me on Twitter or join our good folks Discord, both of which are linked in the doobly-doo. Lastly, if you're feeling generous, consider checking out our Patreon page to help support this channel. Speaking of which, I'd like to give a big thank you to our lovely patrons, such as Izevi, Alex, Andrew W., Branson C., Calvin A., Crowbar of Irony, Daniel G., Deep Not That Deep, Digger the Fox, Dominic G., Emily, Ionos, Urza, Ginkotaku, Godzilla Fan, No For Nothing, Maria T., Marshall B., Mater, Mirth Mouser, Nymad, Cell, Shadow Creative, Stephen G., The Suavest Orange, Tristan G., and Verdon. Thank you all so much for your continued support over on Patreon, and once again, thank you for checking out today's video. Hope you guys have a lovely day, and until next time, you stay classy, AnyTube, and wash your dang hands.